All right. Thank you for everyone who has taken the time to click play on this. This is the first episode of the Hawks Film Room podcast. For our first episode, we had the Peachtree Hoops legend, Brad Rowland, Locked On Hawks podcast host as well. Come on. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing well, sir. Thanks for having me, and happy to return the favor after you've been on my show several times. So this should be fun.
Yes, sir. Having Brad on today, obviously, to talk about the lottery that's coming up here in 5 days now. We're recording this on a Saturday night. This podcast will probably come out on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but lottery nearing regardless, and could take a look. The Hawks on the pick odds have about a 1 in 3 chance to pick in the top 3, and about a 2 out of 3 chance to pick between 4 and 7, with a very small 2.2 chance to pick 8th. So just jumping right into it, who would be your favorite target in that 4 to 7 range, where they obviously have, a 65 basically % chance of selecting?
Yeah, it's interesting. Number one, I would say there's not like an overwhelming lead guy for me. There's a lot of players that I would at least consider in that 4 to 7 range. Obviously, if someone that unexpectedly falls to you, that's different too. But trying to be realistic. I think just to answer the question with one person, I would probably lean to Isaac Okoro out of Auburn. I'm not married to that in the way that I won't be coming out of the lottery if they are picking fourth and saying that they have to draft Isaac Okoro, or they failed. But I do think that he would be the guy that I would say tentatively this early on say for that range. Even when, again, I would definitely look at other guys and not just center on one this early.
Right. Other guys you see kind of in that off ball 3 and D role, or just supporting role, kind of like a Devin Vassell, or some people are high on Tyrese Maxey, which I know you are. Just in the maybe Okoro's gone by 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Okoro. If you're picking even like third and Anthony Edwards is gone, that's around when it's, to me, it's like, if you like him, then there's nothing wrong with it. Vassell and the other guys, I actually probably couldn't get there with the 3rd overall pick. I would definitely prefer Okoro over, as I've said on your podcast. But if they do end up picking, 6 to 8, which would be horrible Atlanta luck to get the 8th pick on a 2.2% chance after you basically might not play for 10 to 12 months, wouldn't surprise me one bit. But nonetheless, the wings in that range, or whatever, the combo guards like your Maxies and your Halliburtons, there's a case for most of them, I actually think, with Trae Young. And there, you can make some cases against some of the guys as well. Size related, concern with Maxey, or just Halliburton. I've heard, some people are not crazy about, just because you already have Herter and Reddish and all these other secondary playmakers, maybe going a different direction there. So is there any event where you would take someone who's not a wing is there a situation where, you're picking 5th, 6th, or 7th and you actually would take a big?
Yeah, I think so. When you first said that, was there any event that I wouldn't take a wing? I would definitely consider a couple of guys that are not wings, and at least one of them would be a big. On my big board beyond the Hawks, I would have someone like Onyeka Okongwu pretty high, and I would say higher than most of the wings, other than Edwards, on my sort of in a vacuum board. Now he has to be lowered a little bit, in my opinion, for the Hawks in our situation, but I would definitely consider Okongwu at 5 through 8, something like that. Would I take him? I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do think that at a certain point it becomes silly to not consider him. I know people will throw around James Wiseman. I'm a little higher on Wiseman than some of the internet is. Not quite as high as the league seems to be on Wiseman, which has him like in the top 3 or 4. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, I think he's a top 10 pick, but I probably wouldn't take him in Atlanta with anywhere that the Hawks could actually pick in the top 8, just because he's a one position player. I think Okongwu is a center as well, but not necessarily as penciled in. You could probably play him at the 4 in certain matchups if you wanted to do that, etc. But yeah, I would at least consider Okongwu. Long story short, and non wings at guards, it's even more interesting because like Killian Hayes might be there too, and Killian Hayes is more of a point guard, but certainly has enough size to where you have to think about him too. I think if he's still available in that range.
So like, let's say the Hawks are picking 6th, and I don't know. Let's just say something crazy happens and Okoro and Vassell are already gone. Like Cole Anthony hasn't gone yet. Whatever. And the Hawks are sitting there at 6. Okongwu, Hayes. That's a real decision. That's what you're saying. Like you would actually.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying I agree. I'm just saying that's
especially if Okoro and Vassell are gone, I think it actually becomes even easier. Because again, like in a vacuum, non-Hawks, I would have Hayes for sure, and probably Hayes and Okongwu ahead of the 2 wings for just everybody else in the league. I know the Hawks have a situation where they don't need a point guard, obviously, and they don't need, quote unquote, need bigs. Makes it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I mean, my best player available would almost certainly be Hayes or Okongwu in that setting. And, as far as tiers are concerned, I'm not sure I want to go down a tier because, again, if you cross off Okoro and cross off Vassell, I'd have to drop down a tier probably. Unless someone like Denny was available, I would at least consider that. But yeah, I wouldn't want to go too far down just to avoid Hayes in the backcourt or Okongwu/Wiseman in the front court. Like at a certain point, I know fit is definitely something that you have to consider, but there is a spot where you have to kind of ignore fit, at least for the most part, and take the best guy available, especially if that guy is like the last player in a tier. And in that situation, on my board anyway, like the last 2 guys in their own tier would be Hayes and Okongwu, and I would have to drop down. And I hate dropping down tiers. So yeah, I think you have to definitely consider, especially Okongwu or Hayes, if that situation happens. And honestly, with the way that these Intel-based boards look right now, like Hayes could fall. I mean, I have Hayes as my number 3 guy, but he could certainly fall to 7 or 8. That wouldn't surprise me. And at a certain point, I know he's a point guard, but he can play with Trae Young, in my opinion. So I don't know. That's part of the fun about this with the Hawks is that there's not a whole lot of guys that you could just cross off. The closest that I can come is maybe Wiseman you could cross off, and even then I still wouldn't like fully cross him off. And then beyond that, like you have to go way down to like Kyra Lewis to get like a full blown cross off for the Hawks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even Cole Anthony, like if you're picking 7th and whatever, like your top 3 targets are gone. I mean,
I wouldn't do it, but it makes sense.
You could at least just like make someone trade for him though. Like move down to like 9th and get, someone who fits a little better. Because I think there's going to be certain guys if they slip, especially if you're picking like 2nd or 3rd and LaMelo Ball is there and Anthony Edwards is gone. I think that's the other obvious, like, all right, this pick is for sale. And I don't know if no one made a good offer for number 2, like I think you just have to take Melo kind of like transitioning into the other 1/3 chance of if they're in the top 3. Like if you pick 2nd, and so I think a lot of people on Hawks Twitter and just within the league like would just kind of Ant is obviously the more like logical fit with Trae, but if he's gone and Melo is sitting there at 2 and no one is making like a real offer, I don't know. I just feel like you just have to do it.
Yeah, I would take him at 2. I'm still of the mind where I would at least consider taking LaMelo at 1. I probably would take Edwards at this point as the Hawks. But given that I have ball number 1 on my big board, sort of overall in the NBA, I have to at least think about it. I'm with you. I think you at least have to make some calls if you're in that spot. If you're number 2 and ball is the best player available, you got to call the Knicks, you got to call the Pistons, you got to call teams that need that number 1 creator and see if they're interested in moving up and be willing to move down, because that's totally fine from a value perspective. But yeah, I mean, if someone makes you make that pick, I would not want to pass on the Melo Ball just because of fit concerns, because I think, yes, there are fit concerns with Trae Young, but it's not a situation where I would just remove LaMelo from the thought process, because this is not a small point guard. The only guy who's a projected lottery-ish pick in this class that the Hawks just pretty much can't take because of Trae is Kyra Lewis, because Kyra Lewis is a small point guard. Everybody else, that means LaMelo Ball, That means Killian Hayes. That means even you mentioned Cole Anthony. Those guys can all play a little bit off the ball, and those guys, they all have enough size where you can at least I mean, Tyrese Maxey, same thing. They have enough size, and you can sort of think about it in a way where you could at least think about taking them. But yeah, LaMelo's really good, and I wouldn't want to pass on him just because you have Trae Young, because I think those guys could work together. Is it ideal? No, but I think if you have those guys in their own tier, and for me, that is a tier that I have. It's LaMelo and Ant above everybody else. If you're at 2 and LaMelo's there, you have to think about it.
Yeah, and you kind of brought up, what you would consider a number 1. I transition. I was going to ask you, I'll save, I feel like, just going back, to what we talked about the last few months, I think what I would do at number 1, but I'll let you, like, you kind of spoiled it, but go ahead and just, if the Hawks did hit the number 1 pick, and would you trade it? I mean, obviously that depends on the offer, but like, would you be aggressively trying to get out of it? Would you be just like what would you do?
I don't think you have to be aggressively trying to get out of it. I would certainly make it available to take offers in a way that, if the Hawks had won the lottery last year, they would not have taken offers probably. They would have just taken Zion and been done with it. This year, there's not a guy in my estimation that is that level of player, or even maybe even close to that level of player. So I think if you win the lottery, that's obviously a good thing. But for me, you have to see what you can get for it. Not that you have to trade it. You don't, because you don't. I think taking either Edwards or Ball at number 1 would be perfectly defensible, in my opinion, especially Edwards, given the natural fit, the local ties, the upside, etc. But yeah, I think number 1 for me would be putting out the for sale sign, just kind of seeing what you can get both in the draft, and also, given where the Hawks are right now, they might want to trade that number 1 pick and try to get a sort of a more established player. And obviously, at number 1 overall, you're looking for a star in return, and maybe not just 1 for 1. But you see what's available. You see how badly somebody wants that pick. If the market's not there, like you alluded to, then you just sit there and you take the best player on your board, whether that be Ball or Edwards for me. And I think you probably have to think Ball is considerably better than Edwards to take Ball because of the fit. But even then, that's defensible for me. So my options would be, put the trade sign out. If you can make the move and get appropriate value for it, I'm on board with that, because I do think that this year's number 1 pick is not as good for the Hawks specifically as a traditional number one pick would be. The only guy in my mind that is like a close to a number 1 overall pick, normal talent and pedigree, is LaMelo. And given the fit stuff, probably not that kind of value for the Hawks. So at least look for a trade. You don't have to trade it, and if you don't trade it, I think it's a 2-man race. Other teams might disagree. I've definitely heard people talk about like Obi Toppin or James Wiseman in that mix, but for me, if you're making that pick at number 1, it's got to be Ball or Edwards.
Yeah, for me, the Hawks getting the number 1 pick is, I would just take Melo, and instead of running the 2017 Rockets offense, I would run the 2020 Rockets offense and have 2 guys with 30% usage. And obviously not when Melo's a rookie, but I'm just saying, like, he's gonna, if Melo pans out, he's a high usage player. He's making plays for other people. He has the ball a lot. So like, the whole thing with Trae is like he has to do so much on offense. So they traded for Teague and everything. They're gonna do more stuff this offseason, but long term, having someone younger than him that could come in and play 30 minutes, play every second he sits. And Trae is like a great shooter off the ball. He was like 98% percentile on catch and shoot, I think. Maybe even 99. I can't on cleaning the glass. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I just feel like Melo also, like a lot of people have talked about the defensive concerns. I think he actually could be decent in a couple years. His wingspan is supposedly like 6'11" or something. 6'10", 6'11". And to me, he is a top tier. As far as like what I actually expect to happen, I have Edwards in the tier with him just because I think Edwards' ceiling is pretty special. But Edwards, I think it just is way more dependent on where he goes. I think Melo, as long as he gets the keys to a decent team, then he's going to put up numbers. I think Edwards, if he's not used the right way, his second stop in the league might be better. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it'll work out right away if someone just gives him 20 shots a game and like gives him the ball like. And then the Hawks wouldn't do that, so that's why I think getting the number 1 pick would be even the number 2 pick would be so good for the Hawks, because no matter what they do at number 1, I feel like Schlink, like, he could, you could criticize Schlink as a GM for some of the moves he made, but one thing he's done is he's been able to bring in offensive talent, starting with John Collins and then Huerter then Trey and Huerter. So I think if he brought in LaMelo or Edwards, I expect both of them to develop under Pierce and kind of, get into a role and produce. And Edwards might be slower to get into that, kind of like a Reddish, and not slower than Melo necessarily, but just, he might be slower than some rookies. And Melo, I think his shooting numbers and stuff might not be the best, but I think he just does so many other things on the floor that by the end of the season, I expect Melo to be like a pretty decent player. I mean, I don't know. He could always just be like really bad at shooting, but either way, regardless of the rookie, unless you're getting like a really good offer for the pick, someone that, is going to be around for multiple years and that fits in really well with the team, I would just keep the pick, because I don't know, especially if I'm Schlink, like, I don't know. At some point, it's like, are you going to trade the pick every year? Like,
I mean, the thing is, you have to. I think you know this too, but there's also a PR aspect and a value aspect of the number one overall pick. You have to make it, if you're going to make a trade. You got to understand that there is some heat on you if that player that you are trading blows up and does really well. I think Schlink has to understand that, and also you have to like take into account what you're going to be getting. Like no one's advocating to trade the pick just to trade the pick. You're hoping to get a king's ransom for the number 1 overall pick. You're hoping that someone falls in love with the player and overpays, because that's the only way that number 1 overall pick really ever gets traded, is if there's a huge offer on the table. You're not giving it away. It's basically trade it for a huge bevy of assets, or you turn it into a fringe star level player that's already established. That's pretty much the only way to trade a number 1 overall pick and get a reasonable return, is those two avenues. And I think both of those would make sense for the Hawks. Obviously, they'd rather go with the established star path. You just kind of never know who's available until it happens.
Yeah, that's what's really tough about projecting this right now, is even after the lottery, if they have the number 1 pick, which we're probably spending too much time on this because there's a 12.5% chance it's happening. So, even if they get the number 1 pick, though, we're not gonna know until like after the playoffs and people fire GMs or don't fire GMs, or like OKC, for example, like nobody knows what they're doing next year. They could run it back with Chris Paul and lose in the second round again or whatever. But if someone like Miami, finally caves after they lose in the second round and says, we'll actually, we'll give up a hero or something to get Chris Paul. All these different dominoes could make role players available and stuff. So like, even if the Hawks end up getting, if the Hawks get like a 4th through 7th type, 3 through 7 type pick, that makes me more want to trade it. Not that those guys in that range can't end up having good careers. It's just, I don't know that the Hawks really want to develop Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, even Trey and Collins, are still developing, especially defensively. Like, I don't know if they want to develop another guy that they have to play 25 minutes. And like, I think we have talked about this on your podcast as well, extensively, but it's still a thing. So if they pick 4 to 7, to me, I know I just said, like, do you trade the pick every year? But to me, I think it's if you can get like even a controllable, like affordable starting caliber, like veteran who is, even if they haven't played in the playoffs, if they've just been part of a decent program, I think it's definitely worth considering. And those guys aren't always available, but if it's a team like OKC who's kind of, transitioning from contending to maybe rebuilding a little bit more, and they are looking for that pick, that kind of team might give up a little bit more and actually give up, a decent role player who really isn't gonna help them do what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's a number, it's very easy to talk about the pick, and we'll do that, of course, once the lottery happens. But wherever the Hawks land, they certainly could be active in moving that pick for a different avenue. I mean, it could be, like you said, it could be cashing it in for a player that's more established. It could be moving down. It could be moving to the future. This is, as we've discussed ad nauseum, this is probably going to be their last lottery pick. At least you're hoping. If you're a Hawks fan, you're hoping this is your last lottery pick for a while. So there's an emphasis on this pick for sure, but the timing is not great, especially if you end up in that, in that 4 to 7 range, which is where they're probably going to be. There are some really nice prospects in there, but there's not the kind of like premium guys that you might expect to get at the number 4 overall pick in a traditional draft. It's just kind of a down draft. So if you don't see the guy that you love in that range, you have to be willing to get creative, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, we could leave it there for until the lottery actually happens, and in which we can actually have real Hawks content for the first time in, I don't know,
a while,
a long time. So obviously another big part of the offseason for the Hawks is going to be, free agency or trade market with all the cap space they have. A little premature with the playoffs still unfolding, but are there any guys who you actually expect to be available that you feel like, the Hawks should be competitive for?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's interesting and really hard to do, particularly for Atlanta, because a lot of the guys who are unrestricted that would be gettable are a little bit on the older side for what the Hawks might want. Like someone that's been discussed is like Danilo Gallinari, for instance. Gallinari is a really good player. He's, especially offensively, is a pretty awesome player. With that said, he'll be 32 in August. He's also a power forward, and I can't imagine him playing a lot with John Collins at the forward spot. So, like, fit-wise, that doesn't make a lot of sense, even though he is a good player, obviously. There's all kinds of guys like that are going to be 30 this year or 32 that are interesting players that would obviously help the Hawks, and even a little bit younger than that. Like, another one of the guys that is always discussed is Davis Bertans, and Davis Bertans is an awesome player because he's a great shooter. With that said, he's also a power forward and has defensive questions. So fit matters. I mean, I've been accused of like saying that no one's a good fit for the Hawks, and that's not necessarily true. It's just the guys that everyone really thinks are really good fits anywhere probably aren't going to get be available, and if they are, it's going to require an overpay. Like for instance, Joe Harris is a guy that I talked about a lot. I know you have as well. Joe Harris would be awesome in Atlanta. He's a pretty decent defender. He's obviously a high-end shooter, but he'll be 29 soon, and that's not super old. But Joe Harris is someone who Brooklyn's going to want to keep, and basically, if you're the Hawks, any player that you're gonna give a real 3 or 4 year contract to, you're gonna have to probably win a bidding war of some sort. I don't think that like established veterans are gonna come to Atlanta for less money. Maybe if they're from here or something like that. But other than that, you're going to be looking sort of to overpay the best guys, or you're trying to find bargains that are being overlooked. And I think it's probably more likely to be the latter. I don't know. The most famous guy that I think, Joe Harris is the natural fit. I think he would obviously make the Hawks better. But if you're looking a little bit cheaper than that, a little bit younger than that, I will give a shout out to Andrew Kelly, who you referenced earlier. I'm still on the DeAnthony Melton and or Chris Dunn trains. 2 guys who are younger, who would help the Hawks in the backcourt, who won't break the bank probably. Melton might be a little bit more expensive, but those 2 guys are like not sexy free agent signings, and they're both restricted free agents. But those are guys that could be gettable in that way. And I'm trying to be realistic too, because obviously Brandon Ingram would be great in Atlanta, but he's not going to get out of New Orleans. Same with Bogdanovich with the Kings. Like, he's not going to get out of Sacramento. I don't know. There's not that home run guy that is like a no doubt $20 million a year player that the Hawks should absolutely sign and have that clear path to sign. That's not fun, but it's just kind of the reality of this free agent class.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would like to see, like, as far as this kind of making the bench a little bit better, like Teague and Bazemore coming back would honestly be fine. It's not gonna cost.
All the Hawks. Millsap.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to say people who would actually come. These people have proved that they would want to play here. So The Dunn thing, I do love it, especially would be interesting. I think he and Trey Young could get over their beef, but the Bulls beat the Hawks by 30 like 3 times last season. Like it was insane. And
And they're bad. But yeah,
yeah,
Dunn is restricted, but he's a guy that the Bulls have kind of put. I mean, he played a lot this year, and rightly so because he was good defensively. But I'm not sure he's in their plans. So if you give him a real offer, I'm not sure the Bulls are going to want to super jump in and match that. But the first thing you said is kind of the thing that I would echo is that it's a lot easier to see like fringe starters / high end rotation players coming to Atlanta than it is guys at 18-20 million dollars a year. Like even like Justin Holiday, like a former Hawk that wasn't great in his first stint, but Justin Holiday has been like a starting caliber wing now for a couple years.
oh, yeah.
Like he'll be pretty cheap. He's 31. Like he's not great, but if he's your third wing, you're in just fine shape.
Well, he also Holiday's also a great example. Like he would be even to me be a better fit than Bazemore because he's like a pretty good shooter. Like that's really his value. So Bazemore kind of like gives you more of what you already have. Like you already have a Reddish who's like, he can shoot. He's capable shooter, but he's not the most consistent shooter. And so you have those nights where, you have 3 or 4 guys have an off night. Holidays for Indiana has been one of their most steady shooters for people who don't watch them. Shot great in the bubble. From what I saw, I mean, maybe the stats are horrible. I really don't know. But anyway, he's just an off-ball shooter and would really just be like perfect for second unit or to play with Trey, like when Herter and Collins stay out. Trey could kind of come back in with Holiday, and it would give you, some stability in the backcourt. I also like Garrett Temple, but I feel like he'll go back to Brooklyn.
Yeah, there are plenty of those guys. I mean, Garrett Temple's a little bit older, but someone who would fill a role and be good. I mean, he's not sexy, and fans will get bored by that. There's a bunch of guys like that. I mean, the high end example of that is KCP, where like you have to give him real money, but he's from Georgia. He actually might want to come back home potentially, and yeah, you got to pay him more than the other guys we're talking about. But he isn't going to get $20 million a year either, and he would help you. So there's all kinds of guys who could be like your third wing or your backup combo forward, but those aren't going to like move clicks and downloads, if that makes sense. Like it's not going to be the huge splash in free agency. Now the Hawks can make any number of trades, but in terms of the guys who are just available in free agency, there just isn't that one guy who's just like a flashing sign. Like the Hawks need to sign this guy for a lot of money.
Satoransky's not a free. Is he a free agent? I'm looking for him. I don't see him.
No, he's not. He's not.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
If he was, I would be screaming about that because I like him.
Yeah, no. But no, Garrett Temple and Justin Holiday are like the poster child for the players that are like when people last season would like tweet us like, how do the Hawks lose to the Bulls or the Nets by 30? It's because those teams had like 4 people like Garrett Temple on their bench playing against Vince Carter and Damian Jones and Evan Turner.
Yeah, having NBA players matters.
Like it's not like something that jumps off, but it's the reason the Hawks were an underdog almost every game because those minutes are just as important as any other minute. So just adding one more guy.
One more guy that I should have mentioned that I keep forgetting because he's not playing in the bubble, but Mo Harkless is a guy that I would look for.
Yeah.
Like, again, probably not someone you want to start, but he could play some 4. He's a big physical forward. He could play some defense. Another guy who's like kind of boring, but would be a huge upgrade on what the Hawks have had recently at that spot.
Yeah, I don't know if this guy I'm about to say is the best fit. I kind of want him to stay in Utah just because of how he's playing there, but I do like Jordan Clarkson as like especially you don't like Jordan Clarkson. He's playing so good in Utah.
No, he was actually he was quite a bit better this year than he's ever been. Not my favorite archetype of a player, but he definitely has some value and would help Atlanta's offense. My problem is that if you put him on the court with Trae Young, like you're just never going to stop anybody, which is okay.
Yeah. Well, I actually like it on offense though because I like Clarkson off the ball. When he's on the ball, that's when I kind of become like you. Like it makes me nervous. I'm not crazy about it, but he's actually not even that bad. When he did do that this season, just like because he was able to just kind of get into that Mitchell role when Mitchell was off the floor a little bit and kind of have things catered to him. I think he's just interesting because you are right about the defense. It wouldn't be great, but you know, I don't know how much worse he is than Herter. And if you could have Clarkson as a guy who could play with or without Trey and kind of be like, your sixth man, I don't know. At a certain price, I just wouldn't hate it. I do question though because Utah, for people who don't follow Utah, they run like a really like strict system almost. Like Donovan Mitchell is almost the only, and Joe Ingles really are the only players in their offense who even really do anything creative. All the other players are really complimentary. Except, Bogey will do some off the dribble stuff, obviously when he's healthy, but like O'Neal and Gobert, they all have very specific roles. Even Ingles, he runs mostly pick and rolls. He's not like taking ISOs or anything. So, unless he's got a mismatch or something. But so in Utah, Clarkson has like a really defined role. And if you come to Atlanta where, it's a little bit more of just run and gun, I could see concerns.
Yeah, he'd be fun. I wouldn't want to pay what it's probably going to take because he was good this year. I feel like someone's going to give him more money than I would, but he would definitely help the offense and give them somebody that can sort of be the engine when you need him to, and also just kind of give you that spark in a six-man role they haven't had a ton of offensively recently. So that'd be good. He'd be useful. I just wouldn't want to pay him, but if he's cheap,
right? Yeah, no, he had a good season, so he might get that Tim Hardaway contract thrown at him. But we can transition. Okay, the one last thing actually I want to talk about that's really important this Hawks season. It's a situation, but it actually might be a lack of a situation with the John Collins extension or not this offseason. Do you think Collins and his representation and all that, and the Hawks do you think there will be pressure applied to get that done before the season? Or do you think, the Hawks will want to just ride it out? Because from Collins' perspective, obviously, you can see why he would want to get it done.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to want it done, especially, there's just so much more uncertainty this offseason than any other that I've ever seen because of the pandemic and the impact on the cap potentially. And there's apparently going to be some CBA negotiations, et cetera. Like there's not a whole lot we know about like even where the cap's going to be for next season. So that adds a whole other layer of intrigue here. Collins more than once on the record has basically alluded to himself as a max player, and I don't blame him for that. I think that's what you want to say if you're as good as he is, and your agent's going to say that as well. If I'm the Hawks, I would not give him the max a year ahead. That would be not smart, in my opinion. My general thought about extensions is that if you're the team, you don't want to give out an extension a year ahead and take on all the risk unless you're getting a pretty substantial discount. Unless it's an absolute superstar, like when Trae Young's available next summer for an extension, I'll be pretty surprised if the Hawks don't offer him the max day one. And that's Young's just on a different level where he's going to get the max regardless, and you want to make that guy happy. John Collins is really good. He's not quite the same level as Trae Young, and I think also the big factor, and something I mentioned a ton, so forgive me, but John being a mid to late first round pick is actually bad for him in this spot. Unfortunately, I wish it didn't work that way, but because he has a really cheap cap hold, it's like $12 million. The Hawks have even more incentive to not pay him a year in advance. If Collins wants a deal that badly, they'll probably find one because that way he would take a discount. But if I'm the Hawks, this is just my general stance, not even just the Hawks, like across the league, I would not give an extension a year ahead unless I thought it was a really, really good value for me if I'm the Hawks. And, paying him $25 million a year ahead when you don't have to, wouldn't qualify as that. Even if I firmly believe like a year from now, if John Collins replicates what he just did this year, he's going to get paid $100 million guaranteed money or more, and he will have earned that. The problem is if you're the Hawks, like you could just match it then. Like there's not a whole lot of risk. He can't leave, so you're looking for a value, and I'm not sure, given the public statements that Collins and his agent have made, and again, rightfully, because they should ask for the world because that's the best way to negotiate. If they are going to be hard set on that, then there might not be a deal. But if they, I can also see them coming in, getting in the virtual room somewhere, and I don't know, hammering something out that's more reasonable. It's one of those deals that like I could kind of see all sides, and that's not fun. It's more nuanced and even more weird because of the fact that again, we have no idea what the cap's going to look like, and that's the biggest domino.
Yeah, I think the Hawks are in a pretty good position. Honestly, I think like everything you said, they can leverage. You know, just doing business. You know, they can leverage the situation and just. It's really not good for Collins to play on a 1-year, $4 million deal, just in case he got hurt or something, and or there could be potential more work stoppage if the pandemic is not controlled, because I don't know if the players are going to agree to another bubble. So just the whole that whole situation, if the time comes up, like even if Collins has to take $20 million a year or something, being guaranteed $80 to $90 million is a big deal. I mean, especially for a late first round pick. So if the Hawks put Collins in a situation where it's like, oh, I wanted $100 million, I'm getting offered 86. I don't know. Are you really going to let $14 million, cost you $80 million? I mean, anything could happen. You could tear your Achilles, you could tear your ACL, anything could happen. So like playing, I would just say if I was John Collins' agent, I would strongly not advise playing 2021 on a $4 million 1-year contract.
It's just you have to. It's hard for fans to do this, especially because fans just want the team to be good and they like the players, and I totally get that. But you have to understand sort of the incentives on both sides. If you give an extension early, you're taking all the risk from the player and putting it on the team, and that's okay. But you have to understand that that's what's happening. The most famous example of that, the Hawks have done not a lot of extensions since I've covered the team, but the last one they did was with Dennis Schroeder, and they paid Dennis a year early. They gave him what everybody thought was like a pretty reasonable contract, but within 18 months, the Hawks didn't want him anymore on that contract. And Dennis, it wasn't like he was not worth any money. He's still a pretty useful player, and this year was like a 6th Man of the Year candidate. But all that to say, like in that situation, Dennis took a pretty decent extension, but the Hawks suddenly went from not having much risk at all to having all of it. And again, within a year, they didn't love that contract anymore. And Collins is better than that, for sure. But if you're Collins and you're making very little money, like you just said, the risk is right now on the player. Until you sign an extension, there's some risk. Now, I don't think that John's going to suddenly fall apart, or even if he gets an injury, he'll still get a lot of money, I'm pretty sure. It'd have to be a pretty crazy injury, I'm knocking on wood right now, for him to not get some real money in free agency. But to your point, if he has a bad year, or if he tears his ACL, he's not going to get $100 million anymore, I don't think. So, yeah, there is a point on both sides, and you have to find it where it makes sense if you're Collins to lock up that sort of life-changing money. But on the other side, the Hawks might be willing to give you that. And if you're the agent, some agents don't want guys to take discounts, and I totally understand that too. Like you wouldn't want John Collins to sign for 4 for $60 right now. That's life changing. I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm saying that's life changing money. But at a certain point, the agent's not going to love that, and the player, like you can't take the Ozzy Albies extension if you go to the Braves world. You can't take like a comically bad extension either. So there's that middle ground somewhere. And we won't know where that really is until we know where the cap is and what the situation is. But yeah, if you're a Hawks fan, you're hoping that you lock him in for sure. But it's not a lock by any means because, again, the Hawks have some incentive to not pay him when it comes to the cap hold and the risk.
Yeah, I think also you just he seems to have a great chemistry with Trey. So I feel like there's pressure on the Hawks to do it as well. And I think it's one of those things where if you handle Collins a certain way, then it kind of sets the precedent for Huerter and Trey. They're going to look at how you handle the Collins extension and expect you to treat them like that. And whether it's good or bad, I mean, if you make Collins ride his whole final free agency season out and then only offer him $80 million after all that, that's probably not what you want to do because you have someone like Trae Young if you can't re-sign Trae Young, that's a disaster. So I would just be really like not like willing to overpay Collins, but at the same time, like if he's not comfortable playing the season on the contract, I feel like you kind of have to do something. I mean, you have to do it, and you have to, like you said, you can't just offer him, way too much because you do have that leverage on him too. Like he doesn't want to play the contract, so I feel like something probably will get done, and it'll. If I just had to guess, I would just think it would be around like 90 million or something. Maybe he gets more than that. I don't know, but
if it gets done, I think it will be at least 90 million.
Yeah, now, no, I don't think it'll be below. Yeah.
Again, that does not take into account the potential fall in the cap. But if the cap is somewhere normal, I don't think Collins is going to take anything less than that. And I think he's going to want more than that. It's just that situation of like how desperate is it, and there's always factors that we don't know. And I mean, I say that as someone who does cover the team, and like we've been in the locker room, and there's always things that we can't know on either side. So part of the negotiation is just it's not fun to think about, but like there's stuff that we're not privy to between both sides. Like where is Collins' breaking point? Where is the Hawks' breaking point? I wish we knew. We just don't know that right now.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on it because obviously it is a huge thing just going forward in general. The other option, obviously, that we didn't discuss is, some kind of trade or whatever for someone that does want to extend him and offer him, whatever he's asking for. So we don't even have to open that box, but just throwing it out there. We can kind of transition into NBA awards, all NBA, all rookie, stuff like that. I think we can pretty much agree Giannis is the MVP.
Yes.
So do you have a defensive player of the year candidate you feel passionate about, or?
I would give it to Giannis, and I've said that. That's I don't think it's like I think that Giannis is the MVP, and there's not really an argument for anybody else. So I'll say that. Defensive player of the year is not as clear, but I think Giannis would be my pick. There's probably 3 or 4 guys that I could see people voting for and being reasonable about it, but I would go with Giannis, who is the best defender on the best defense in the league. That isn't how it always has to be, but I think it's the rare situation where his rep is actually maybe he might even be underrated defensively still. That's how good he is on defense. Like it's either him or a couple other guys, but I would give him the 2-for-1 and give him DPOI as well.
Yeah, they don't have defensive player of the year on Action Network. If you're looking at I didn't know if they would or not, but yeah, I would probably give it to Giannis too. I mean, you could consider Gobert or even like Adebayo or someone, but
people are talking about Anthony Davis as a DPOI candidate. I think he's been awesome this year, but I think Giannis has been better and on a better team defense, and that does matter for that award. Like no one ever wins Defensive Player of the Year in the modern climate if your defense isn't awesome. And the Lakers were a good defense, but they were not the Bucks. The Bucks defense was ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I would give both awards to Giannis. Just kind of rewarding, that season and how dominant they were. The Lakers were a really great team, and they were also dominant, but they were a little bit more of an offensive juggernaut. They were a good defensive team, and they have guys like Danny Green, Caldwell Pope. Obviously, LeBron doesn't always play great defense, but he has the ability to fit within a scheme. Obviously, just with his IQ. And Davis, he was a great defender, but I think I would just go with Giannis as well. Just I don't know, the Bucks when net rating and everything is just crazy. So I just like rewarding a season like that. Personally, rookie of the year, obviously going Ja Morant. Just had a great season. Played way more games than Zion.
He should be unanimous, and if he's not, we've all messed up. That's all.
I think someone will just vote for Zion out of just.
I tend to agree. There are enough people voting where someone will probably vote for Zion, but I do think that, that one's really really easy. I understand that maybe if you said per minute Zion was better, that's okay, but there were so many more minutes for Ja.
Ja. I mean, just had a great season, and like you said, he played so much more. We could slide over to that screen actually. Ja played the most minutes out of every rookie. DeAndre Hunter second, by the way. And
DeAndre was first until the bubble. He was leading
Yeah.
as of like last not
Right.
even a week ago.
Right.
So,
Minutes per game, DeAndre led. But yeah, Zion. I mean, he was all the way down. He played 700 minutes. I mean, he played like Michael Porter minutes. You know, I mean, I don't know. People want to put Michael Porter on the rookie team, but he played 900 minutes, so it's tough. I mean, he's definitely one of the best 10 rookies as far as just talent, I think. But he
man,
played.
that actually Zion playing a lot fewer minutes than Michael Porter Jr. is kind of all you need to know about
Yeah,
Zion's game these days.
exactly. Which Zion and Zion and Porter were both in the bubble, so it's not like
Yeah,
Porter ran
and
away
actually,
with it in the bubble or anything. Zion had to leave the bubble, but that's just, I mean,
he still played
yeah, it is
most of
what
their
it is.
games in the bubble. So
I mean, Porter played 55 games, and Zion played 24 games. Porter just didn't only played like 17 minutes a game when he played.
yeah, there were long stretches, especially early in the year, where Porter just wasn't playing. Which
Yeah, or he would play like 4 or 5 minutes, I think, at first too.
yeah,
And
just
he would
not
just
he was not in the rotation is the best way to put that for a
yeah.
long time.
Well, and some of it was injury related. Like they would just play him like 6 minutes and then see how his back and everything responded. Then they would play him 10 minutes. It was just a whole process about his health. But yeah, Ja Morant rookie of the year. Could do the rookie teams first if you want over the All NBA. I think Reddish pretty much doesn't have a chance, even though he had a great finish to his season. There are just a lot of guys that outproduced him offensively.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and we can dive into it, but something that people have to keep in mind about All Rookie is that for the longest time, All Rookie, there are certain numbers you have to hit, or at least close to it. And I think because a lot of people that are voting are not watching every team in the league after January, you can't have really bad numbers and make all rookie like for the full season. Obviously, we've all discussed Cam's tale of two seasons where he was really bad early and then pretty darn good after January. But for the cumulative, his numbers are not they're just not very good, and that kind of takes you out of the mix in a league-wide award when most people like we know how well he played after January, and the diehards know, but there are people that are voting that just don't know or don't care, and they're going to look at their full season numbers and see that Cam just doesn't have the same kind of efficiency and even the counting stats that other guys do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wrote about Cam multiple times, especially once he started playing better. Glenn Willis was as early as December talking about how much different Reddish was looking than he did in his first 10 or 12 games. But when you look at the final season stats, I mean, he had 96 turnovers, 87 assists.
I mean, here's the worst one for Cam. I mean, his counting stats don't look great. The worst one for Cam is that he shot 38% from the floor.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, and I don't. I mean, again, like true shooting is more effective than measuring this. It was a little bit better because he got to the line a lot and all that stuff. But if you're a voter that's not a super locked in person, and you see 38% from the floor and 33% from three, and those are just lower than like everyone else that he's battling against, that's going to take you out pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, no, I think like if there was a third team, he would be on it. I don't think he's like not even close. Like
Agreed.
I just think there's like,
I mean, defensively he was really good all year, and that's the thing that we were definitely saying the entire time. And defense is just, especially on something like this, defense gets undervalued unless you're just like Matisse Thybulle and that's all you ever get discussed for. But like Cam's defense was genuinely good all season long, and to the point where maybe like someone like Thybulle was better. But if there was an all rookie defense team, Cam would be on it, in my opinion. It's just that his shooting was so bad for the first 2 months that he really kind of made it impossible for himself to get on this kind of list.
Oh yeah, if there was like a rookie defensive player of the year, I mean, he would be a candidate. Like him and
Brandon would have been certainly in the top 3 or 4.
Him and Brandon Clark and
Thybulle.
Yeah, Thybulle, and maybe I don't know. I don't think Culver really translated. I think it was kind of more like
he was okay, but I think Cam was better. I mean, it really would have been. And again, this doesn't exist. We're just making it up as we go along. But
right.
I really think that he should finish in the top 3 or 4 of that kind of thing for defense. And again, if you just started the season at Christmas, Cam's numbers would look good enough where he would have been definitely in the mix for second team. I just don't think that he's gonna being realistic. Now, could you say that he's one of the best 10 rookies? Certainly you could, and probably would. It's just that the first 2 months matter, and they still count in terms of the stats.
Oh yeah, and you have people like Darius Garland, where you can argue who's better between Reddish and Garland, but Garland had the ball more. He played a couple more minutes per game. He didn't have Trae Young on his team.
He shouldn't make it either. By the way, Garland was not good this year.
Yeah, but he's probably going to make the second team.
That's what I mean. Like, even with that said, there's always, and this, I mean, the more accurate one of that even is RJ Barrett. Like, anyone who watched RJ Barrett would agree he was not a good basketball player this year. He was not efficient, but he was third in scoring among rookies, and I think like fifth in rebounding. And that guy is just going to make an all-rookie team. Like, he was not good, but because he had the ball a lot and because he's famous, there's no way he's not on at least one of the all-rookie teams. He might make the first team. I mean, that's just how this works usually, unfortunately.
Yeah. My first team would probably be
Ja's obviously a lot.
Obviously Ja and Kendrick Nunn and Zion. I would put Zion. I don't care. 24 games.
Well, the thing about so Zion, and we don't have to do a ton of this, but the debate about Zion is interesting because like I can totally see leaving him off because he just didn't play enough. But if he's on any team at all, he has to be first, and he'll make it. He's gonna make it, which is fine. I mean, he was so good that it's fine. I'm
just putting him there because I know he's gonna be there.
Right, and then and I think Brandon Clark is a lock as well. I think.
Right. Yeah. So you got Zion, Ja, Nunn, and Brandon Clark, and then my last spot, I would probably go Hero just because he played on a good team. Like, he played real games that really mattered and played pretty well. I could see PJ Washington or Paschal. Pascal, but I would go Hero. Given that you already had Zion and Clark as bigs.
If we assume those four guys we mentioned are going to be on it, and I do assume that, I think the only guys who realistically could, and this is could not should, but could make it, are Rui, PJ Washington, RJ Barrett, and Pascal and Hero. So that's 5. Now, Rui, because he is famous and because he had good counting stats, I wouldn't put him on there, and I don't think he'll make it. Barrett should not make it flat out. And I would go Pascal or Hero. Those would be my 2 guys. I would not go PJ Washington, who was pretty good, but I think Pascal was probably better than Hero. But Hero, to your point, played on a much more important stage. He was pretty darn efficient and was better than I thought he was going to be for sure as a rookie. So I'm expecting Hero to make it, if I'm being honest. My projection would be those 4 guys plus Hero, and then Pascal and maybe Barrett, unfortunately, would be the other guys who I could see happening.
Right. And then my second team would obviously be Barrett, Pascal, Rui, PJ, and then I'd probably go Kobe White with the last spot, or maybe Jackson Hayes. But
yeah, this is where it gets interesting. It's like
it's just so open. You could go Terrence Davis, but he just didn't really play a ton, like as far as minutes.
I think Terrence Davis was one of the best rookies on a per minute basis and was really good. But you get into counting stats, he's going to get some votes from people that I think are smart. Like I've read some people's lists, like your Zach Lowe types that actually pay attention to the league. And Terrence Davis is on all those lists, and he should be. He was really good this year. I just don't know if like the run-of-the-mill voter is going to value that. I think I would vote for Terrence Davis. He was really good this year. But and also we should mention DeAndre Hunter. I mean, DeAndre Hunter. I know everyone, and I know not everyone. I think most Hawks fans are prioritizing Cam over DeAndre, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're talking about a case for all rookie, Hunter's case is a lot better than Reddish's case for all rookie.
Yeah, you could consider Hunter with the last spot, honestly, over Kobe White. I just like glossed right over him as I have him highlighted here on my screen. But
he just has a really good case. I mean, I'm not saying he should make it. But
no, I mean, we talked about it before.
When you're number 1 in minutes and like top 10 in points and rebounds, like that's a pretty good traditional case.
He was 4th in 3-pointers made, 7th in field goals made, 7th in free throws, 4th in rebounds, 4th in rebounds, 6th in points, total points. Shot 35%
he shot
from
okay.
3.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would project Hunter to not make it if I'm doing my guesses and like, you know, I'm not even sure when they're announcing these awards, but if that happens, I won't be shocked if he makes it. But if he makes it like last year, for instance, Kevin Herter, I think finished 10th. Like he made second team all rookie, but I'm pretty sure he was 10th of 10. If that happens this year with Hunter, if he finishes 10th of 10, I won't be blown away. Because he, actually he gets the bump from being a top 5 pick because it just get more attention and the counting stats are pretty good. I don't think I would vote for DeAndre Hunter, but I think he would be in the top 12 for me, top 13. So anyone that's in that top 12 or 13, you can see making it.
Well, yeah, just the minutes too. Like if you were, for example, if someone was trying to consider DeAndre Hunter or Terrence Davis, DeAndre Hunter played 800 more minutes.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot more minutes. I mean, Davis was obviously much more efficient and on a much better team and a better player, honestly. But
Hunter played more minutes.
That's a big swing.
Hunter played more minutes than Zion played total.
I mean, people don't understand how much DeAndre Hunter played this year. The guy was extremely durable and played 32 minutes a game. That's more than like real players play. Like I guarantee DeAndre Hunter had played more total minutes this year than like a lot of like quality NBA starters that didn't have like long-term injuries. Like he just played a ton.
Yeah, he definitely played more than like Kawhi and like people that were just managing things.
Anyway, but yeah, I think our list is about right. I mean, guys like Kobe White have a chance. Obviously, Jackson Hayes has the efficiency numbers. I hope he doesn't make it. He didn't play enough for me. It didn't do enough. But yeah, there's 10, 11, 12, 13 guys for 10 spots. We know who 4 of them I think are for the first team. So there's more clarity than you might expect. But there's always some interesting runs at the end of all rookie second team.
Yeah, no, it's definitely just one of those things where it widens up so much at the bottom. My only thing about if people are gonna consider Michael Porter is like, are those same people gonna consider Lu Dort?
Well, the thing about Porter, I think Porter would have made it if the bubble counted, but because it doesn't, he's not going to make it, and he shouldn't make it. He didn't play nearly enough without the bubble. He didn't play enough, frankly.
Yeah, I was just joking because like Lu Dort was, has a similar case to Porter. He played 80 less. He played 80 less minutes, and he was a good rookie. But no one will make him a case, and people will bend over to make.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you're talking about score. When you're talking about scoring and famous people, it becomes more interesting. But yeah, I don't know. The only low minute guys that have a chance are Zion and Terrence Davis, and that's the way it should be because Terrence Davis was awesome, but and by the way, we didn't mention Tybal either. Tybal has a chance for sure.
Yeah, like no, we should have mentioned.
I see people voting for him, and I understand that too because if you value defense, like I actually think Tybal might be a touch overrated defensively right now because people think he's like the greatest defensive player of all time, and he's just not. But he's I think he still finish like top 2 or 3 in steals and blocks because that's where he was for most of the season, which is crazy as a wing.
He led rookies in steals by 30. And he played 300 less minutes than Cam Reddish, who was second. And he played
blocks too, because he was close for a while. If he didn't lead blocks, he was definitely in the top couple.
He was 4th in blocks.
So he was 4th in block shots as a wing.
Yeah, and he played less than a lot of the people in the top. Like John Morant played almost 800 more minutes than him, and was not even close in steals. Like everyone else in the top 8, he played the least amount of minutes for steals. So he was like crazy, but he also scored 4 points a game. So
yeah, he's there's some weird cases between Tybal and Davis. Those are 2 very interesting, like hipster-ish cases, and I'm not negative on either one of those guys because they're just not traditional. I think most of the time, all rookie is almost not exactly a points per game contest, but it's always close. And this year there are a couple of candidacies that are not like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, we covered it. Our list is pretty solid. The end of it is just going to end up just basically being a matter of opinion because it gets really close. But
yep,
obviously the biggest thing for the Hawks is in regards to all this is if Trae Young has a chance at All NBA. I think he has a shot at the 3rd team. I don't think it'll happen, but how close, I guess, like, do you think he'll come, or do you think he will be third team?
I think he's going to get votes and that he deserves them. I think it's very unlikely that he actually makes the third team. If you look at the way, there have been a couple of straw polls out there from writers who have talked to real voters, and very very few of them have voted for Trey third team. He's always on the list, and he should be. But honestly, something that really really hurt his candidacy, I think he would have a much better chance. But guys like LeBron and Ben Simmons and even Jason Tatum were all eligible at guard, and people got creative. Like LeBron's going to probably be a first team guard for some people, and that's just if you add other guys ahead of Trey, that makes it life even harder. That makes it tough, and then you're putting him against guys. There are certain All NBA voters who are just not going to consider a guy on a bad team. That's just kind of like a hard and fast rule for some people. And then you throw in the defense and all that stuff. Like you're basically comparing Trey on ballots to guys like Bradley Beal and Devin Booker on one side of like the younger scoring kind of guys on subpar teams. But then you also have like Russell Westbrook, who has crazy numbers on a really good team. You have Kyle Lowry, who's like a beloved figure on a great team. Obviously not the same kind of numbers that Trey has. You have Donovan Mitchell. You have all kinds of different guys like Chris Paul. Like there's just a lot of jockeying there. And when you throw in the other considerations like LeBron at guard and other things, I think Trey actually finishing in the top 6 at guard is pretty unlikely. But honestly, he would have been, if you removed LeBron and all them, like, and actually just use the guards, like the real guards, he might have been 6th for me. Like he was really really good. I know the team wasn't good, but his numbers are. I mean, people are probably desensitized them a little bit now, but his numbers were just ridiculous. Like he was an awesome offensive player. You could tell me he was a top 5 offensive player in the league this year, and that would be, I think, correct. Obviously, defensively, he was not that. But if you throw in just what he did on his own, and the team is better when he played, et cetera, I wouldn't fault anyone for voting for Trey third team. I don't think he's going to make it, though.
Yeah, I mean, 4th in points and 2nd in assists per game. That's pretty much
very efficiently too. Like
that's pretty much all you need to make an All NBA team. Obviously, it's not a guarantee because of all the factors, wins.
I mean, go down the list though. Like the guys that I think are definitely going to make a team at guard, that are eligible at guard anyway, are James Harden. He's a lock for first team probably. You have LeBron. You have Chris Paul. You have Dame Lillard. That's 4 that are like absolute and utter locks. Luka was eligible at guard as well if they wanted to put him there. That's another guy who could be a guard on the list. And then you get into the world like I talked about before of everybody else that I mentioned, like your Ben Simmons, your Jason Tatums, your Westbrooks, Lowry, all those guys. So like if your best case scenario is already like 5th or 6th, and then you throw in a bunch of guys who are on much better teams than you that have been All NBA before, you're just fighting an uphill battle. I mean, that's just the reality. I'm not saying it's right, but there are enough people that just would never vote for someone on a bad team that he's already in a bad spot, even if that's not his fault at all.
Yeah, I think he deserves to make it. I would say I don't think he will. I don't know. I think I just based that on like how you kind of just hear things in the media about other guys a lot more, and like we've said about other things, especially with the rookies, how many people, I mean, everyone has seen Trey's highlights, but I don't know how many people outside of Hawks fans realize like Trey does like whatever you see on Instagram, he does that like 6-7 times a night. Like if you actually watch every Hawks game, he is, people freak out about Luka or LeBron when they make a crazy play to win a game. Like Trey does stuff like that. The team just wasn't very good. I would vote for him, and that's completely unbiased. I would vote for the guy who's 4th in the league in scoring and 2nd in assists, and had, a great, couple great, teammates in terms of fit, but overall just not the best roster. So I really just wouldn't hold it against him, but I saw it. So like I don't expect people to vote that way. And I also don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's like if Trey doesn't get it, I don't think he's robbed. I think like Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, obviously, like all these people, if LeBron and Luka make it as guards, like you can't argue any of that. I just think Trey, like, I would do my ballot in a way that Trey would be on it and all those guys would be on it, but I don't expect to see. I don't think he'll make it, but
Yeah, I mean the big thing again, like I agree with you. Like I said before, I think I would have probably had him like 5, 6 if you just actually took the guards and what they did this year. It's tough for anybody to try to make their first All NBA team and be on a really bad basketball team. And again, worth pointing out, the Hawks were night and day when he played and when he didn't. So it's not like it's not like it was his fault, but they're just practically there are so many voters that you hear from that they'll say this publicly, or they'll write it, or they'll say it on the podcast that just will not consider guys, or at least really consider guys who were on bad teams. And there's enough of those, and then you throw in the competition that actually is real of guys who are really good, like Westbrook and Lowry and whoever. Like Devin Booker, who was incredible in the bubble, isn't going to make All NBA, I don't think, because it didn't count the bubble. Like if they did it now, he might make it. But like Devin Booker's really good too, and was on a better team than the Hawks, and he's not going to make it. Bradley Beal, same thing. Like Bradley Beal averaged 30 points a game this year and has been an All NBA guy before, and I think he's not going to make it either. It's just kind of crazy to think about like some of the numbers that are being put up, especially by Beal and Trey this year, as the two best examples of this, of guys who put up like these video game numbers and still aren't going to make All NBA. And Russ might be the same thing. Russ probably will make it if you go off of the straw polls, but like if he doesn't, Russ averaged like, not triple double again, but darn near like 30, like 39 and 9 or something crazy, and he may not make All NBA.
yeah, and it was even better from like December 1st to the once what they clicked or whatever, he was like
Well,
32.
he was bad early. Like, that's the thing
Yeah.
about Russ. Like if Russ had been that guy that he was from like Christmas on the whole season, he might. Well, he definitely would have made it.
Yeah, no,
He
if
was
he
like superhuman from
right.
like January on.
Yeah, he was like 32, 8-8 from like 2020.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, Trey's not going to make it, I don't think. Again, same thing as DeAndre for our rookie. Like, I won't be shocked. I'll have something prepared between the two of us. We'll definitely prepare something as if they might make it, and just be ready for that. But I would bet on the Hawks getting shut out, unfortunately.
Okay, so with all that being said, we could kind of transition to first round. Obviously, most of these series are not that interesting, but there are a couple series that could be close. The main one is obviously the Rockets and the Thunder now. It's kind of insane to me that the Rockets are still favorites without Westbrook, because I think straight up I would have gave the Thunder a great chance to win. Now I think I'm definitely picking the Thunder. The big question mark is how many games Russ is going to miss, but I think if he misses the first 3 games, I think that could be huge, and then if he comes back, who knows, how great he's going to be feeling. So do you think the Rockets should be favorites?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of the only series that doesn't have a definitive favorite. I understand why the Rockets are favored. There is some skepticism about OKC because they weren't supposed to be good this year, and yet they still were. And I love Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul was incredible this year, but there's some skepticism still about him. I don't know. I understand why Houston's favored. I do. If you ruled Russ out for the whole series, you probably can't favor Houston anymore at that point in time. Like, other than what I mean, in contrast to what you said, I think if Houston was healthy, they should be a pretty solid favorite in this series. Now, will they win it? That's something different. But they've been there with this team. This is actually kind of a battle of two teams that don't have a lot of depth to them. They're both teams that really rely on like 4 or 5 guys, and then they kind of go a little bit lighter after that. So an injury like that to Houston does hurt them. I would still pick Houston. I think even if you ruled Russ out for the whole series, I think I'd probably still take Houston. I would not bet on it though. That would be a situation where you're making me choose one, and I think I just trust. Well, I can't say that out loud. I almost said I trust Harden. That's not true. I don't know. Houston's more talented, even
You don't
without
you don't
Russ. I
worry
think
about the size?
I do. I mean, that's something that we all want to see. Honestly, about Houston is just like, can they pull this off? The problem is, it's not really a problem. Oklahoma City, I like Steve Adams a lot, but he's not going to be someone that like punishes you with size. Like he obviously defensively on the glass, they're going to kill Houston, I think, because of Adams. But it's not like he's going to be like the guy you throw the ball into and he eats you up on the glass in terms of scoring, offensive rebounds, all that stuff. He's obviously a role player, so that matters. Um, I don't know. I think part of this is that I don't think Russ is as good as everybody else thinks Russ is. I know we just got done talking about how good he was like numbers wise, but I think Russ limits you in a lot of ways sometimes. Um, but honestly, it's going to come down to Harden. I mean, if Harden plays like Harden from the regular season, then they're going to win. But if he plays like Harden has in the playoffs at times, then they may not. It may not be that
Yeah.
simple, but it kind of is in some
Yeah.
ways.
No, Harden's definitely the reason they're still favored. I mean, he's insane. Like he's probably second or third for MVP,
Yeah,
depending on
I had him third on what I put out, and not that far behind LeBron. Like he was
right.
again incredible this year. James Harden is really, really, really,
Yeah.
really good.
If the bubble counted, I think Dame would be second for MVP, but since it didn't count, I don't know. I
I
don't
don't
know.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that, but I understand what you're saying. I think
I
people got
mean,
to get away with that, but I understand.
I just think he was already probably like fourth or fifth anyways. It's not like I
Yeah,
think
he
he
would
went
have
for
been in the top 6 or 7 for sure.
he didn't jump from like I mean he just had a great year like he
He did.
always does. So I don't know. He was first team All NBA before the bubble. So
Yeah, no,
uh,
you're right. It's
yeah.
the Thunder Rocket series is the only one that I think is an actual toss up, and yeah, Houston being favored minus 150 right now without Russ is pretty silly. I think if you made me bet it right now, I would take OKC just for the value. I just wouldn't bet it unless you made me. I wouldn't bet either side. But I think it's like a coin flip right now. And if you're telling me it's a coin flip, the team with plus 130 is the side. It's just uh
Right.
like Houston being 150 favorites without Russ for at least a couple games is kind of silly. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the only value on there for like an underdog that I would actually maybe take is and I wouldn't do it, but I think Indiana is I think they do have a chance. They're plus 260. Um
I
just
I mean
I
that
just
number is probably too high. I agree with you.
they
That number is
just
probably too high. But
Miami's just overrated on all this. Like if you go to their title odds, they have better title odds than like Dallas. I mean, I actually none of these teams really should have better title odds than
yeah, I
them,
was gonna
but
say
it's
they
just
probably should have
it's
better titles in those teams, but not by this much. If that makes sense. Like they're
yeah,
minus.
it's like they should be plus 5,000 just like Utah and Dallas. Like they don't have a chance.
Well,
And
that's the
people
thing. Miami is a little bit overrated. I would agree with you. My problem is that I don't think Indiana is very good. So that's I think Miami should be favored. They probably are favored by a little bit too much. So if you're looking for a value play, it might be Indy. If you made me pick an underdog to actually win a series and you can't take the Thunder, I would still take Utah. And I don't love that. I'm definitely picking Denver, but I think Utah has a better chance to beat Denver than Indiana does to beat Miami.
oh yeah, I think that's probably true. I guess just I think Denver will probably win. The other thing about Miami that I don't thing about Miami I don't love is just how young they are, and I think their offense is so system driven. Like they run these guys off all these sets, these shooters. That if Indiana is able to disrupt it and chase people into the paint without getting Turner in foul trouble, because the Heat were not that great. I think they were fifth worst at points in the paint. But in this series, they might actually want to go to the paint because like the Pacers don't have a backup center, and I think that's why the Heat are big favorites and why they'll probably win. Denver, I think they'll win, but it is kind of worrisome that they really haven't had their team play together. Barton is I don't know if he's back, but Murray just got back. I mean Harris just got back, I think, and they just really haven't all put it together in the bubble, and they had a couple bad games, like losing by 30 to Miami. I could definitely see Utah like stealing game one and making that really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is not exciting, but I think I don't know. There's not a single underdog that I really like in terms of value. I mean,
Yeah, I wouldn't bet Utah.
Philly would be kind of
Yeah.
interesting to me, honestly. Like, I'm at least mildly intrigued by the notion that Joel Embiid could just take over the series and give them a chance. But are they going to win the series? I don't think so. So yeah, there's not a single underdog that I would actually bet. I will say this, and I will say this confidently right now: the best value on the board that we're looking at right now, I bet online, is the Lakers minus 500.
Oh yeah, that's money laundering right there.
That is too low. The Lakers
They're
should be
gonna,
minus 1,000 or higher.
yeah, they're gonna win. So if you,
The no, I mean, with all respect to Dame, and again, Dame
yeah,
was
he's not,
incredible.
they're not beating LA fourth time.
There's this now momentum
Yeah.
that they're like going to threaten the Lakers, and that seems really silly to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like the Blazers are at plus 395. Like you said, they should be plus 900. I mean, at least.
Honestly, I think this is probably going to be seem like a hot take. I think Dallas has a better chance of beating the Clippers than the Blazers do of beating the Lakers.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And I wouldn't pick Dallas either. By the way, I'm not picking Dallas.
No.
I'm just saying like why are the Clippers a substantially bigger favorite than the Lakers right now? I don't really know. That makes no sense.
It's because people are betting on Portland more. Like really, that's the only reason. But
Yep.
No, the Lakers. If you're anonymous listener, if you need to launder money, the Lakers minus 500. But the Sixers, I just don't think I don't think they could do it with without Simmons. I mean, I know like Simmons always hasn't been like great in the playoffs, but I don't know. They just don't have people to handle the ball. Like Tobias Harris, Al Horford, and Joel Embiid are your top three players. Like someone has to bring the ball up, and the Celtics are the opposite. Like they're super versatile. Have six different people.
The only argument is that Embiid's just the best player in the series. That's the only way that Philly, because that's the only series on the board in which the best player in the series might be on the worst team is that series. I guess maybe Dame is just ridiculous and is the best player in that series, but you still have LeBron and AD on the court. Every other time in all these matchups, the best player in the series is on the other team. I know like Luka's really good, but Kawhi is better right now. Same thing with like Heat Pacers. Like I know a couple of guys in the Pacers, like TJ Warren's been awesome. Like Victor Oladipo's really good, but Jimmy Butler is better. Same thing with the Thunder. Like I love Chris Paul. I am the walking Chris Paul guy. James Harden is better than Chris Paul. So like that's the only thing I can think of to tell you about an underdog is that maybe Joel Embiid just takes the series over. I'm not predicting that though. But
you have no respect for Aaron Gordon.
I like Aaron Gordon. He is not as good as Giannis. Sorry.
Nah. There's really not like, and this is why Vegas does what they do. There's really not anything on here that really like looks that great to take. I mean, if you wanted to lay like $1,000 to make $200 on the Lakers, I mean, you probably would make your $200 pretty much guaranteed. Even if one of LeBron or Davis got hurt, I still think they might pull it out. So that's kind of a safe thing, but at that point, is it really worth it? So, the Raptors and Nets, like all these other, the Raptors, Nets, Magic, Bucks.
Not even more talking about, honestly.
Right. It's why we didn't say anything, because it's just five or less. The only way the Nets or the Magic win is if like the Bucks or the Raptors just get lazy up 3-0 or something. So, or if the Nets just like, the Nets are honestly one of those teams they could just go ballistic and shoot like 60% from three and end up in a game they have no business being in. I mean, something like that could happen, but it's not going to happen, 2 or 3 times. So,
yep,
nothing really going on there. Do you have a title favorite, or are you kind of just like, let's see what happens between the Bucks, Clippers, and Lakers?
I don't have a huge take. I mean, my general thought on the Clippers Lakers thing is that it's pretty much a toss up. Like I understand both sides. I could see why people are favoring either one of them. I want to see that series, but I don't have strong thoughts on it. If I was going to bet a single team to win the title, it would probably be Milwaukee, because Milwaukee I have more faith in to make the finals than either of the other teams. That's not me saying that I think Milwaukee's necessarily better, but I think Milwaukee is more than even money to make the finals, in my opinion. So if you just do the math on that, there's probably the best single bet to actually win the championship. Even then, though, like there's not a single value that I'm looking at on this board that I really love. I mean, Houston was the one that a lot of the handicappers liked, but given the Russ thing, and given that they could honestly lose in the first round, that hurts that a little bit. I understood it though, because they have that upside with the way they play, but at 14 to 1, 13 to 1, that's not probably enough for me. Toronto's sneaky though. Toronto will be the other like maybe team, but I'm just not sure they can score. I'm really not. So, I wish I could give you like a great title bet right now, but given these odds, Milwaukee is the team I probably bet on, and I don't love it.
Yeah, I got Milwaukee at plus 600 before the season.
That is much better than what I would. I mean, that is good value. I mean, you would.
Right.
I would still doesn't mean they're going to win, but that's a great bet, a great value. And for me anyway, if I'm you in that spot, I let it ride to the finals and then just hedge on the finals, because I think they're more than likely to make not it's not a lock. I think they're more likely than not to make the finals. So if in the finals, they'll probably be underdogs to the Clippers or the Lakers, but not by a lot on a neutral floor. So
yeah, I'll also have a plus 900 Toronto bet from July 3rd when Kawhi flew back to Toronto.
Well, hey, that's still a better odds than one of the ones on the board.
So really, like, I have the East. I feel good about the East. Like, if Toronto or Milwaukee,
let it ride.
If Milwaukee or Toronto makes it out, I have options with the finals. Like,
you are just rooting badly for a Bucks Raptors Eastern Conference Finals, because if that happens, you will not lose money, which is good.
Right. Well, if they both, I could hedge the finals.
You could buy out the finals if you wanted to.
Right. For sure. So the West, I was just honestly like, the Toronto thing, I just did it so far long ago that I really didn't even like think about it when I bet Milwaukee. But the West, I was just like, I didn't do anything because I was like, the Lakers and the Clippers, it's too hard to pick that. You know, I'm not gonna risk money on one of them, and then I don't know. I didn't really have like a strong feeling either way. And then all the other teams in the West, I wouldn't waste a single dollar. Like, I wouldn't bet a dollar to win on the Nuggets to win the West, or it's just not going to happen to me. Like, it's just no way that anybody besides the LA teams comes out of the West.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. Nothing would shock me too much, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like Lakers Clippers, and even if one of them loses, I will like the other one in the Western Conference Finals. If that makes sense. Like, even if you get a fluke loss, like if somebody takes down the Clippers in round 2, you still have the Lakers as a pretty substantial favorite in the conference finals. So
yeah, so I just feel like the chances they both lose are so small. So
yep, I agree.
I just like never mess with it because the odds have never been good ever since Kawhi got to the Clippers. The Clippers have been like anywhere from plus 250 to plus 300 for the title. And
yeah, I was in Vegas
same thing
that they signed, and we were wondering out loud. All the books were closed because it was happening so late. But me and Sam Vecini and Robbie Callan were trying to see what the Clippers number was going to be, and they posted it. I was like, well, that's not even bettable. Like, it's not even. Like, I would have liked to have invested a little bit maybe in that, but yeah, they wisely made that number pretty low.
Well, that's when I kind of took advantage of Milwaukee, because once Davis was the Lakers and Kawhi was the Clippers, that's all anyone was really betting for a minute. So the Bucks went from like 400 or 450 all the way down to 600 for a while there.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems funny. Like, they should be the favorite. I mean, they are the favorite right now in most books, and that's correct. Even if you don't think that they're the best team, they don't have to play the Lakers and Clippers until the finals, and that means, in my view anyway, they should be the betting favorite at this moment. And it's funny because they'll probably be an underdog in the finals. The betting favorite will probably be an underdog in the finals, and I mean that on both counts, and it actually makes sense on both sides.
Yeah, no, it's right, because they have a better chance to get there. Like the Lakers and the Clippers losing factors into their odds. So even if you, I mean, I would probably pick the Lakers or the Clippers over the Bucks, honestly. Like, I just trust Kawhi or LeBron more in the finals. And
and I don't blame you on either count. I just the most confident I am about anything in terms of making the Final Four of sorts is Milwaukee making the finals. So
I'm rooting for the Bucks to be undefeated, waiting in the finals, so that I get good
Undefeated.
odds. Yeah, so I want
Wow.
good. I want some good odds with the Lakers or the Clippers. So
Well,
if the
Zach,
Bucks,
I can almost guarantee you they will not be undefeated on a neutral court for 12 games.
I'm just telling you what I'm rooting for.
It'd be fun though.
If they're undefeated, then the Lakers or Clippers are going to be like 2-1 or something, and they're going to be like 1-2, and yeah,
It'd be fun.
it'll be way more fun for me to bet, because then I'll basically get, if the Lakers or the Clippers were like 2-1, I would basically get all the money either way, if that makes sense. Like from before the season, like the plus 600.
Yep.
So yeah, gambling stuff. That's why I saved it for the end, for any Hawks fan who is just already tuned out or doesn't care about what's going on, but still has us playing. Yeah, saved a little NBA gambling talk for the end if that's something you're into. But there's also a lot of gambling kind of stuff you can do with the draft. We'll save that for after the lottery as far as talking about that. But you can actually bet prospects to go at a certain spot in the draft. And some of those are actually pretty interesting because it's all going to change after the lottery. So, like, if you look at that before the lottery and take someone like Okoro, if the Hawks end up picking third or something, his odds might change based on, if people think that he's been linked to the Hawks, etc. So something fun kind of with the draft and the lottery that kind of ties to the Hawks with gambling that you can also look at, just, if that's something you like. But thanks, Brad, for coming on. It was a pleasure. We ran pretty long, but I appreciate you for sticking around this long. And most all the Hawks fans are going to know where to find you, but for anyone that doesn't know where to find you, let them know.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is fun. Yeah, you can find me. All of my stuff gets put on my Twitter account, which is at BT Rowland, ROWLAND. I host Locked On Hawks podcast. You can find that, subscribe to it, and Zach and I work together at Peachtree Hoops. Follow that, and of course, check out Hawks Film Room because it's very good. So hopefully everybody's already following that, but if they're not, go ahead and do all that stuff. Follow Twitter, YouTube, subscribe, etc.
It's sports internet things. So everyone go follow all Brad's stuff. I'd like to thank him again for coming on, and appreciate anyone who made it to the end of the first episode of the Hawks Film Room podcast. See you next time.